Good morning. Good to see you. Trying to do something a little different this morning. I've been playing around with streaming live with some additional software so that you can see the text on the screen as well as maybe some Hebrew and other things here and there. So, why don't we get started? Apologies for being late. We are in Proverbs 24. Verse 3. 24 verse 3. We left off dealing with this conversation about kind of chasing after first pleasure in terms of sexual pleasure. Then we got off to talking about we were talking about drinking, and I just kind of used drinking to stand in place of anything that we would use to kind of blunt reality. So drinking, drugs, masks for what we should really be looking for, which is God. 24 verse 3, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. So, well, let's. You'll notice here that our little text has these things into sayings here. I'm not sure how accurate those are, but we'll kind of use them as a benchmark for today. So then verse 4, by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. Remember that wisdom here is dealing with the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? Christ is often talked as being the font of wisdom, God's true wisdom, His true light, His truth, right? So, what do we build our house upon? Do we build it upon wisdom, the fear of the Lord, or do we build it upon reason and science to the extent that we completely forget about God? I think that reason and science, our human reason, and the ability to empirically see the world are valuable tools. They're important, but they should be prioritized. Scriptural knowledge, wisdom given to us by God through the Holy Spirit and through the reading of Scripture should be number one, because God ultimately understands the world better than we'll ever hope to. His eyes, his senses, his empirical senses are not dulled by sin, whereas ours are. We can see perhaps the evidence and yet not quite understand what the evidence is telling us. A lot of things with quantum mechanics, the observable universe, things that people are seeing, and then routinely we're having to change our understanding of the universe because we look at the evidence, we don't understand what it means. And the scientists will reply, well, that's just because we don't understand it yet, but we will eventually. But the problem is that the more we understand, the more we open up, the deeper our microscopes probe, the more we find out that there is infinite complexity in the design. We thought the bottom level design, the bottom level basic units of the universe were electrons and protons, and then we find out that there are quarks and all sorts of things inside those, and who knows if when we finally have the technology to get down and look at quarks very clearly, we'll find out those aren't the ultimate building blocks of creation in the universe. It's hard to know. So we should be honest with ourselves and remember that our senses are flawed by sin, and we should then look to first God's wisdom and then trust our own empirical senses after that. We build our house, and house I think stands in place of the idea of, we can often refer to a person's family as a house. So I think we could think of here, a person builds their house, their legacy, their family, their inheritance. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle, right? All of that is built on a thorough understanding and knowledge of wisdom. And wisdom is a fear of the Lord, and understanding Him. Through knowledge, its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. So I think that Hebrews would often look at, Hebrew people would often look at riches not necessarily being gold and silver. Hebrew people would probably look at riches being oftentimes like let's take a look at it right now, Psalm 128. I was just counseling a couple getting ready for their wedding coming up in September, and we were looking at Psalm 128, and so I won't the whole thing, but like verse 3, your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Behold, thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. So what is the man's blessings? It's not gold and silver, it's not the riches of the world, but it is children. It is a faithful and loving spouse, and it is probably fear and knowledge of the Lord as well, right? Through this knowledge, let's even look that up, huh? This word for knowledge underneath it, and see what we're dealing with here. I bet you it's interesting. 23. Here we go. 23 verse. What verse is that? 23 verse. 24 verse 4. Yeah. Knowledge, here we go. Perception, knowledge, perception, skill, prophetic knowledge, that's interesting, right? Knowledge possessed by God, that's interesting too. Discernment, understanding, wisdom. In wisdom literature, so the Proverbs would be wisdom literature. Discernment, understanding, wisdom. So, going back to our proverb here, through kind of wisdom, discernment, knowledge, right? Its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. So perhaps the discernment is knowing what's rare and beautiful and what isn't. The reality is, I've noticed in my time as a pastor that rarely money is always in kind of short supply. It always is. And at the same time, money is by far the easiest thing to gather up. I don't mean that flippantly. I don't mean to be rude to anyone who's given and who has sacrificed. But what I mean is, like, if we were to put all the things next to one another that were difficult to acquire, volunteers, right? Meaningful participation in ministry. So, like someone who decides they're gonna be, Pastor, I'm so sure about this ministry that I'm gonna give of my time. I'm gonna become a deacon, and I'm gonna be here all the time to help you do whatever you need to do, right? And then if you ask them for money, it's actually not to downplay, because it's very important. People give, like, Von Joanne Meyer giving to build a chapel at the school, everyone who helped with the capital campaign here at the congregation to make the church more accessible. Like, all these things are really great. But, I think it's kind of easier to get people to volunteer their money than it is to volunteer their time or their utmost effort, right? Like, really digging down and doing something incredibly difficult. Like, I don't know, someone, like the narthex needs a remodel, right? And someone just says, you know what, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna do the whole thing myself. I'm gonna just do that for the congregation. Or maybe something more meaningful, like, I'm going to lead someone comes up to me and says, Pastor, I don't even want you to worry about this. I'm going to take a group of people down to Rosebud. We're going to do a mission trip, and I'm going to take care of everything, right? I'm going to do this because I think it's important, and I think we need to do it, right? That's harder to find than it is to ask folks to give money, because money is something we all have. Money is something that can be sacrificed and given. And I wonder if I think a congregation where people walk inside and they are sincere people, really like excited about the things that they're doing, which is why I really want to push this idea going forward, hopefully into this upcoming year. Really get everyone in the congregation involved in a volunteer role. Like everybody, I'm going to ask every single person from the congregation, like, what are you doing to mentor, to volunteer, to serve the community? And we're going to have this big, huge wall, and I'm going to write every person's name in the congregation, and I'm going to put where they're serving, right? So everyone can see it. And so everyone who walks in understands that every person in this congregation, because they love Christ, and they love the world, and they love their brothers and sisters, they're serving someplace in the community. What's a rare and beautiful treasure? And I'll tell you, some recent conversations that I've had with people in the congregation, a really good friend, someone that you can talk to and that you can care about, a spouse, children, a pastor who cares for you, and vice versa, as a pastor, a member who truly loves you and cares for you as well, right? I mean, you might think, like, we've got it all backwards. We kind of look at the expensive cars and possessions and houses and think those things are rare. They're not rare. You can go anywhere in the United States and if you've got enough money, you can buy them. And if you want to work hard enough and do whatever it takes, you can make the money, right? See, like, in other words, those things are readily accessible for anyone. But having a good friend that you can trust, having a spouse that loves you and supports you, having children that are faithful, these are actually more rare than we would give it credit for. So a person with discernment, a person who builds their house on wisdom, right? They fill their rooms with rare and beautiful treasures. And a person with wisdom understands what's rare and beautiful and what's easy to get and not that rare. The ironic thing is, you really get into the diamond industry, diamonds are readily available all throughout the world. There's a glut of them. So the diamond merchandisers, they basically keep them off the market in order to create a market for diamonds. But they're not as precious as we think they are. And gold, why they're finding, you watch the Discovery Channel, they're finding gold all the time. It's not as rare as we might make it out to be. Why do we give these things such value when things that are really rare, they're not everywhere? Going on. The wise prevail through great power, and those who have knowledge muster their strength. Surely you need guidance to wage war, and victory is won through many advisors. Well, I'm curious too here. Let's look at this. Let's look at these verses here. This is really interesting. I think I could be wrong, but I think what it's getting at is maybe teamwork or being willing to hear another person's perceptions, right? So a man, a strong warrior, a gavar, okay, a strong warrior, strength or ability to fight, okay, a strong warrior, a wise, strong, so how did it translate it? The wise prevail through great, you know what, I'm going to go back here and put in ESV, just because I think it's a little closer to the original. Okay. And then let's try that again. A wise man is full of strength. A man of knowledge enhances his might, for by wise guidance he can wage war, and an abundance of counselors there is victory. Okay, yeah, that actually makes a little more sense. Although it says here wise, so this is the word for wise here. So we have a strong warrior, a wise one, because it's an adjective. So basically a wise, strong warrior. Yeah, because that's the word here. I guess you can get man. But it's strange, because there's automa for man, and instead it uses this word, which is geber, and so I think just reading man on this wouldn't make sense, because later on it uses strong again. So the idea here, Hebrew does this a lot, where he uses two words basically saying the same thing to add extra strength to the idea in general, right? Maybe an exceedingly, a wise, exceedingly strong man, a mighty warrior, a wise, mighty warrior who is strong, right? Again, how's it? A wise man is full of strength. Okay, that's how they have it. Wise man, strength. Okay. Preposition. Oh, it's a noun. I wonder if it wouldn't be a better translation, something like a wise man, a wise warrior, a strong one. A wise man full of strength, and a man of knowledge enhances his might. Man of knowledge increases, increases strength. And then I think this, because key is a conjunction, and it uses for, but I wonder if it wouldn't be better to say because, right? Because by wise counsel you wage your own war, for there is safety in a multitude of counsels. In other words, a strong warrior who is wise, it seems to me what it's saying is a strong warrior who is wise increases his knowledge with counsel, right? He doesn't go off and wage war on his own, but rather he listens to a multitude of counselors. But I get the sense here that this is not, a guy who listens to his counselors and does whatever they want, but a guy who has strength on his own, and he makes probably good decisions, and he's aggressive, maybe in kind of a good sense. Like, I think sometimes in the world, men are a little bit too passive, and they just need to kind of speak the truth and be honest, assertive. So maybe a wise, assertive, mighty man, he increases his knowledge. So a man with a wise, strong warrior who is strong, increases his knowledge because or increases his strength because he has knowledge, right? Because he counsels, he has wise counsel. Instead of waging war on his own, he has a multitude of counselors. He listens to other people, in other words. A wise, strong man, for by wise guidance he can wage war, and an abundance of counselors there is victory. I don't know, I almost feel like there could be a better translation than that, but maybe I don't know Hebrew as well as I think I do. But you get the sense of it, right? A strong, assertive, aggressive guy doesn't go off willy-nilly, but he listens to his advisors. Wisdom is too high for a fool. In the gate he does not open his mouth. Whoever plans to do evil will be called a schemer. I'm going to go back to the NIV one because it had those sayings marked off. Yeah, okay. So it just did this one by itself. I think the NIV actually gets at it better, doesn't it? I mean, I think it's, I think maybe it's inserting some opinion. Like this really isn't, I don't think, accurate either, right? The strong, the mighty warrior who is wise, right? Who has knowledge, prevails, and those who have strength, I think it says more like those who have strength increase their strength through knowledge, because you need guidance, because you receive guidance to wage war, and you have victory through many advisors. So I think it's a caution not to go off half-cocked and do your own thing, but rather listen to advisors. Now this is interesting. Wisdom is too high for fools. In the assembly of the gate, they must not open their mouths. Now this is probably lost on a modern audience here, because the gate of the city would be where trials would happen, where justice would happen. So it'd be a place for maybe, like, for better or worse, for lawyers to speak, people who are trained or at least wise in wisdom, who speak truths. So a fool doesn't speak at the gate because they don't have what it takes. They're gonna open their mouths and they're gonna. How does it go? A fool remove. There's a saying about that. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. So this is Proverbs chapter 17. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue. So in other words, this is pretty good here. Better remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Stephanie says on page 792 in the Lutheran Study Bible, it talks about what happens at the gate. Okay, yeah. I think the gate would be also the Greek version of the Areopagus, maybe the place where philosophers sit around and speak truths to each other, talk to one another. So it's not a place for a fool to go and start yapping his mouth, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Verse 8 and 9. Maybe we'll go through. Let's see here. Maybe we'll try to go through verse 12 at least. Whoever plots evil will be known as a schemer. The schemes of folly are sin, and people detest a mocker. Well, that is craziness. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see if we can find that. So, the devising of folly is sin, and the scoffer is an abomination to mankind. Huh. Whoever plans to do evil will be called a schemer. Verse 8. Whoever plans to do evil. Okay. Let's take a look at this in the Hebrew. He who plots to do evil, these are pretty straightforward words here. Yeah. Hara is evil, that's pretty straightforward. He who plots, calculates, invents, judgment, imagine, account, to think. Okay, so I think that there's a contrast here between way back at the beginning of our jump off here. Through wisdom, a house is built, right? And you have all these rich treasures, but now we get down here, someone who has the ability to maybe like if we to talk about a computer sense, like you've got a processor, you've got a good processor. You can take in information from the world and you can chew it up and spit it back out. But if you don't, depending upon your RAM bus, how the information is getting there, or your operating system, how you're understanding the information, or maybe the operating system in terms of what you want to do with the information. That is what matters. So we're talking about the inverse of the first discussion about the man who builds his house through wisdom, right? A schemer, the opposite of that guy. He's someone who uses this information, but instead he schemes to do evil. Whereas a shrewd, wise person does what is wise. He sees the world for what it is, and honors the Lord and how he serves. Yeah. Okay. So he plots to do evil. He plots to do evil. Let's see here. Low. To okay. Okay, so there's a Hebrew way of saying it. So he who plots to do evil will be called a schemer, right? This is the word for schemer. Purpose, discretion, device, plot. So like a scheme, a plot would probably be the best thing, like a plot in an evil sense, right? He will be called a schemer. Devising of folly. I'm curious what folly is here. So devising of foolishness. Folly. Surprised there isn't more on that. Okay, well this is interesting here, right here. Thou knowest my foolishness and my sins. So in Psalm 69, these foolishness is compared with sins. Here we have Proverbs 5, in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. So this folly I don't think is necessarily just being silly or being, whatever. But here, it's from the same as evil. So it comes from the same word root as evil. So it's not this. I don't think we should necessarily look at this as kind of like with it there not being a negative context, because it seems like there really is a negative context. Folly is something that leads to bad places, and it is equatable with sin, right? So it's not good. It's not just a simple thing. So the devising of folly is sin. That's interesting. Let's go back to that. Devising of foolishness, amarte, yeah. Yeah. An abomination. And the scoffer is an abomination to mankind. To men. Scoffer is called, oh, okay, it's a participle. I think it's a participle of being. I don't think there's any scoffer here. Oh no, it is to scorn. So it's like, and so a scoffing one is an abomination to men. Like a participle understanding. A scoffing one. How does it translate it? One who scoffs. Is that what it is? And it's the scoffer. I just go scoffer. A scoffing one. Same thing. Okay, scoffing one is an abomination to mankind. We should probably look up scoffer, huh? I think as a scoffer, I don't think we have the same kind of connotation as the ancient Hebrews would. So maybe we got to dig into this. To scorn. Okay. Well, here's another translation: derision, scoffing, have in derision, make a mocker. My friends scorn me. It's interesting here because wow, that's interesting. So a primitive root to make mouths at, from the effort to produce a foreign language. So in other words, you're mocking someone by basically um, making a fool or foolishness of how they speak or how they act or how they go, right? So because there's another translation here where you have like ambassador to intercede, so it must be like in some circumstances this word means to generally try your best to intercede or to pronounce that language, but then in bad connotations, then it means like to make fun of, to make light of their language, their culture. What I'm trying to understand is why this is really interesting. Why scoff? I mean, like, do we just mean the general sense, like someone who is full of scorn towards the world is an abomination? I mean, just someone who is full of sarcasm and who is scorning the world, the culture. They're not much fun to be around. That's for sure. They're not a good thing to have around. Um, an abomination to me. I kind of figured that this was going to have a very close connection with God, right? So this is someone who is scoffing against the Lord, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. It just seems like it's general scoffing, general scorn. I want to take a look at my study notes here for a moment, just to see if it's got anything interesting. Sin is the opposite of fearing, loving, and trusting in God above all things. The fact that people devote much time, energy, and brain power to planning defiant behavior, against God does not hide the truth that such behavior is folly. The scoffer is an abomination. Since scoffers are always stirring up trouble, nobody really likes them. Yeah, that makes sense. Scorning, sarcasm. Yeah, it's hard to be around. I've been part of a large family for a long time, obviously my whole life, and um, we don't always treat each other the best, and sometimes it's hard to be around each other because of that very fact that there's sarcasm and there's, you know, these kind of things. So I guess I could see that. If you're caustic, hard to be around, eventually you're going to find yourself all alone. And maybe that's kind of what the Proverbs is trying to say here. Verse 10. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Well, I don't know what you would. That seems pretty straightforward. I want to see how the NIV translates it, and if that's a standalone chunk. Let's see it real quick. Oh no, it has a whole section here. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty. Actually, I don't mind this translation. If you falter in a time of trouble, how small is your strength? We should maybe take a look at the Hebrew. Um, okay, so small is R is for narrow, tight. So small or narrow. Um, if you faint in the day of adversity, straits, distress, trouble. Oh, that's fun. Okay, well, so here's an interesting thing. Um, so it's using the I don't know if you sing. There's a rhyme here. I don't know if you can see that. So hit repita beyoim. Okay, so if you faint in the day, so sarah sar, which is basically it's the same word, but one is the adjective version and one is the noun version. Okay, so um, so in your time of adversity, like we might look at it like this. So Israel goes through the reason why Israel's stuck when the Egyptians come up behind them is, and maybe it's a little confusing. When they come out of, they're traveling through the Sinai Peninsula, and for the most part, if you know that area, it's very hard to travel because it's basically filled with mountains, and the only way through is certain canyons, certain trader roads that travel between the valleys of these canyons. So what happens is you get into these box canyons, and you can't really do anything about it. In fact, I'm going to show you just so you can see it and you get a sense of this. I wanted to actually talk about this at one of my let's do Red Sea crossing. Okay, here we go. This will be more helpful. And we'll do images so we can see it better. Okay, this is interesting right here. Open image, a new tab. Okay. Oh, hello. Too big. Okay. So if you can see what I'm looking at right here, we tell the story probably wrong, okay? Because we talk about crossing the Red Sea here, but in all reality, most likely we came out. Actually, let's look at this map. This is going to be good. Going to be helpful. Okay, so we come out of Egypt, and then we go through here. So we're crossing over the Gulf of Suez before we get there, right? And then we're traveling through this trader way, right? And then if you see the darker areas, these are mountains that are covering the Sinai Peninsula. Eventually they start going through this road here, and they get into an area that becomes basically a box canyon. They come out on this little area here, and I don't know if you know this too, but there's a natural land bridge underneath the water here. This is very deep water. This is very deep water, but right here there's a route that's very shallow, and they found actually wagon wheels and stuff on the bottom of the sea in this section that are Egyptian, right? Solomon marked the two places on either side of the Gulf of Aqaba with two pillars that are still standing to this day. That's why you see these things. They're actually still standing. They've been rebuilt over the years, but they're built in the same spots. And this is a satellite map here, right? So they come to. You can kind of see it here. I'll open up this one, so you can see it. Yeah, that's a good picture. So you come through here, and you'll see that there's like basically a box canyon, right? And they get all the way to here then, and the Egyptians are coming in behind them. There's nowhere to go. There's literally nowhere to go north, south. They can't go back because Egyptians are there. The only way they can go is this direction, and that's obviously what they do eventually. But they don't know that yet. Anyway, the Hebrew word that we're talking about here is a strait, right? It's a place of distress. Like you get yourself into a box canyon, you get into a narrow way. Yeah. And that place, that being in that narrow way, whatever, it becomes a word used for then adversity, affliction, anguish, distress, tribulation. So then we go back to the proverb, and then it uses the word as a noun, right? The adversity, that place of adversity, that time of adversity, and then it uses the adjective version of it because it's the reason it's adversity and it's a place of adversity is because it's narrow, because you're boxed in, right? So then your adversity is small. So it uses the word twice there, which I think is really clever, right? So if you faint on the day of adversity, then if you faint on the day where your straits are narrowed, then narrow is your strength, right? That's pretty cool. I like that. You don't see rhyming in Hebrew very often, so, or at least word plays like puns. Yeah. Deliver those who are drawn. Let's go back to the Proverbs here. Let's try to finish that one section here. Rescue those being led away to death. Hold back those staggering toward slaughter. Yeah, hold back those who are stumbling towards the slaughter. If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay everyone according to what they have done? So I think this is huge, right? If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? So God kind of throws his weight around here to a certain extent. His weight is that he knows all things, he sees all things. So do you have a right in front of your holy God, right? Because then he says, does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay? So I think repay has to be talking about judgment, right? So will he not repay everyone according to what they've done? What are you going to do? You're going to stand before the God of the heavens and the earth and tell him, I didn't know. And I should say, when you did, when you knew things were going wrong, when someone's being led away to death, when those staggering towards slaughter, the staggering. In other words, I think the staggering is an idea of they're running so fast towards slaughter that they can't keep up with their own feet. They're tumbling over themselves. It's, in other words, there's a rush to judgment. There's a rush to kill someone who maybe shouldn't be. And this happens all the time, right? Jesus Christ steps in, you who has no sin amongst you, throw the first stone. And this stuff happens all the time. So how small is your strength? We knew nothing about this. The Nazis, we did what we were told. We followed our orders. We didn't know. I remember that too. There's a story, I can't remember, an American general. I don't know. No, it's German citizens. There's a story about it. I don't know if it's true or not, if it's apocryphal. Yeah, I don't remember. I remember reading on Facebook somewhere some stupid story about them being. Maybe I saw it on. I bet you I might have even seen it on. What do you call it? Band of Brothers. That might have been where I saw it. The German citizens marched out to the internment camps and saying, "We didn't know," and everyone's like, "You knew, and you just refused to." We knew nothing about this. Hey, how could you? The ovens are running. People are going out there. They're never coming back. You knew. It's not okay to say we didn't know. It's not okay to say we were just following orders. If you know evil, then you need to call it out. It's interesting too that does not he who weighs the heart perceive it, right? So Yeah, I'm wondering if this is probably not talking about God, is it? I think this is God speaking to mankind. Like, so we go back to this idea way back here, how by wisdom a house is built. So like someone who's wise and understanding, um, you can't claim to be wise and also say, but we knew nothing about this. We were unaware of what was happening in terms of the those being led away to death and those being staggered towards slaughter. We didn't know anything about it. We were wise. We just we're wise, and most of the time we just didn't realize it here, and so we're sorry. And well, yeah, but does not he who weighs the heart? In other words, does not someone who judges, who actually thinks critically in their heart, don't they perceive it? Don't they know? Um, I assume because it goes on to this is not he who guards your life, because that's talking about God, right? Does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay? But perhaps he's saying, maybe it's a continuation of verse 12. If you say, well, we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? I'm curious. Let's see what the ESV says. Let's see what the ESV says. Maybe we should do the NSRV. That's always a good translation too. If you say, behold, we did not know this, does he not he who weighs the heart perceive it? No, it's pretty much straightforward. It's the same translation. I think the he here is maybe God speaking subjectively to you. He's asking a question to you. Aren't you a person who weighs the heart? Aren't you a person who understands these things? Didn't you perceive it? You weren't aware of it? I think you're lying to yourself. You're lying to me and you're lying to yourself. Yeah, so we can pretend and tell ourselves we didn't know about it or we didn't. I think this is actually interesting, maybe in everything that's going on in the world right now. Maybe it might give us pause as Lutherans. We've always been a culture who have been very hands-off politics and hands-off of things going on in the world, and perhaps that's not the right tack anymore. Because we want to just be like, we're just going to do church. We're not going to be aware of what's going on out there. We're not going to do anything about it. We aren't a people who speak very forcefully about abortion. We know it's wrong, but we don't speak out about it very much. And I don't know if it's right for us. I think we have that's not fair. I think we have a good confession. I think sometimes we take this as part of a platform, but we don't make it part of our lives. Every day, I mean. And I think sometimes we like to put our heads in the sand and pretend that what's going on at the abortion clinic every day is not a Holocaust, And I'll use that word. And if someone hates me for it, then so be it. But it's bad stuff. Okay. We'll stop there. We'll go on to Micah. Let's go on to Micah. Micah chapter 5. Did we finish chapter 4 last week? I can't even remember. It's been so long. Okay, let's see. Right into here. Malachi, that is too far. There we go. Oh, there we are. Micah. You know what? I think we left off actually at 4 verse 6. And we are really running short on time. Well, we'll just keep cranking away at this stuff. I'll tell you what, next time we'll start on Micah, and we'll see if we have time for Proverbs. So we're going to pick up Micah chapter 4, verse 6 next week. And we'll follow there. Just go ahead and read ahead. We're not in any rush. We got plenty of time. So we'll start there next time. Lord's blessings to you. I hope I thought that was fun today, and I hope that this was helpful for you as well, having this scripture in front of you, some of the Hebrew, some pictures as well. Lord's blessings, and we'll see you later on this week.